Welcome to another video on Microsoft Access. Today I'm going to talk about using subqueries. In reality, as you're a programmer and you're using Access as your medium, what you'll find is that during the course of programming, you'll create objects such as queries and temporary tables that are only there for a short time or there just to supply data to another object, such as another query that feeds into a form after the data has been massaged. The challenge with that is that it can create a large number of objects in your database that eventually can get confusing to a programmer that takes over after you leave the position, and somebody has to take over the programming, or it can lead to other confusion. And so in an attempt to minimize the number of objects, sometimes you can use a subquery. And what I'd like to talk about today then is the effective use of a subquery. Now, subqueries come with a few rules. Those rules are basically that your subquery has to have at least a select statement and a from statement. So remember we talked about the minimum for a SQL statement period. Well, it's the same minimum when you put it in as a subquery. You have to enclose the subquery in parentheses. So when you see it embedded either in the criteria or part of the select statement for a field, you'll see it, the embedded query, in parentheses so that it stands out. Okay. The next thing is they say that theoretically you can have as many as 31 subqueries embedded in a single query. Well, let's get practical. I don't think anybody's gotten even close to the 31 figure. And it would totally depend on the amount of memory and, frankly, quality of your performance degrades significantly during that time. And so the reasonableness of doing that is probably not there at all. So yes, it has a physical limitation of 31. You probably won't even come close to getting there. You can use a subquery as an expression as long as it returns only a single value. In fact, the example that I show you today returns only a single value, and then I'll show you what can be done with that single value. Okay. You can use an order by clause in the subquery as long as you use a select top or a select top % command within the query. In other words, the query has to return a specific number of records. In many cases, that's 1 if it returns 1 value, or it has to have a specific number of returned records so that they can match up adequately with the main piece of the query. So that is somewhat of a restriction there. You cannot use the distinct command unless the subquery includes a group by command. So your main query can't have a select distinct command if the subquery doesn't have a group by command. In other words, both pieces have to be distinct, and you can make it distinct in the subquery by using a group by command, whereas in the main query you would have to select distinct or use a group by command there. And then you must implement aliases if you're using the same table in both the query and the subquery. In other words, the fields can't be named the same. The query would get confused. So with that as a backdrop of restrictions and rules, so to speak, let's launch into looking at our query and seeing what we can do with those. So let's open Access, and here we have, I already took time to have the first one written, so I'm going to right click on this. This one will eventually be our subquery. And what this subquery is going to do is it's going to look in the DIM account managers, and it's going to average the length of service, TIS in their shorthand, term in service, of these people. And so it's going to first use a date diff function in the center part of the query here. The date diff function has 3 arguments. the length of time that you're measuring, the day, the week, or the year, or even month in this case. The hire date is going to come from the table up here. So we're looking at this field right here, the hire date. And then the third argument has to be another date. And we've chosen in this case to use today's date as the hire date. So the date diff function basically is looking for from today's date to when they were hired, how many months have they been in the company. This will return an integer, not an integer, it'll return a long value with 2 decimal places. So it returns a part of a month as well. Then we're going to go ahead and use the average function around it. And the average function will, of course, then return the 2 decimal points there. Okay, so we have our value picked out. If we run this thing, you see that it comes up with 150 months, 0.68 months. 150.68 months, okay? So let's close that one down here, and let's go look at the other query that we would like to embed in it. So here's the scenario. What we want to do is we want to find how many people have been with the company above average. So how many of our account managers have been with the company more than an average employee within the company? So we're going to open this up, and what we'll see is the terms in service in months. This field here looks very familiar. First off, it has the date diff function in here, and the date diff function is the second half. Here we're not going to average it, so we're not going to make it average over the entire data set. We're only going to make it find the length of service for a particular account manager. And so the account manager ID is going to sit there, and that's going to be my count. And if we run that, what that looks like is this month here. Now, my count is counting the number of IDs that are the same. Remember, had a count underneath it. So we've got 2 people with the same ID, possibly came to the company, left the company, came back. So that would be the situations there. But the terms of service are, the time in service is cumulative in the company that we're looking at, in the data we're looking at. Okay, so now we have this person here and their term of service. How many of these people are above average? Now, where would I want to put that? Well, I think I want to put that down in the criteria. So let's go ahead and see how this works. I want everybody that's higher than this 150.68. But I want to do it programmatically. I want to do it on the fly. I don't want to hard code it. So let's go ahead and put it in design view and then open its SQL view. And I'm just going to copy that. And let's look here. I'm going to right click on this field and go to the zoom command here. If you haven't used the zoom command, it's a pretty cool function. It allows you to get a bigger window so you can paste into it and see that you really have everything that you needed to. So here we've got the select statement from our, I'm going to go click OK, from our figure 02 query that we had there. So my criteria down here, after I put a mathematical symbol there, is going to say equal to that at this point, but I want everybody in the database that's greater than that particular field. Check the subquery syntax and close the query in parentheses. Remember what it said to do? To enclose it in parentheses was one of those rules. And I broke the rule before I even got started here. So let's remember to do that. And, you know, that's kind of the way I program. I wait until I hit an error, and then I go fix the error, because a lot of times it's hard to remember all those little rules along the way. So I click OK there. And if I tab out, it'll do that syntax error checking, and I'm good to go. I'm good to go. And so I'm going to click on View here, and look what we have. We have 11 people in the company that have an average term, that have a term of service that's higher than the average term of service of 150.68. So basically, more than 151 months. Our least average one, our least number person here has 152. So now let's go ahead and look at the SQL code here. And what we'll see if we dissect this a little bit, so we've got the select statement here, okay, and we've got some aliasing going on with an as here and an as here. That's fine. From dim account managers, one table, okay, and we're going to group by the date difference here. Having, which is the criteria row, is going to use a having clause here, and we've got the greater than, the date diff, which was this up here, remember? The date diff up here was the field that we were using. So the date diff greater than our SQL statement down here. So we have the embedded SQL statement, and we could literally throw this one away, and this one here would still run. And we can remove that, delete it, yep. And this one can still go in design view, and we can still run it and get the same exact data. So in this case, when we want to do something on the fly like that, that's one way of saving a query. All the data is right. If somebody needs to decrypt it and figure out what you did, it's all encapsulated right in that one batch of SQL code. I hope you liked this little video on subqueries. Hope to see you again. Thanks. I want to thank you so much for coming and watching this video today. There's a lot of other great content that you can explore on this channel. In fact, a link to one of them is on the other side of the screen here. Also, please take a few moments to subscribe to the channel. It'll keep you informed of new videos as they're posted, and you can keep up with all the great content that's being put out here for everyone to enjoy. We'll hope to see you again later.